What's up, guys? This is Robbie, founder of Umoja, and today we are going to be talking about the TLDR on tokenomics. Most of you don't know what the hell tokenomics is, which is okay. And some of you think that you know what it is, but you don't at all. And others of you actually do know. So let's start with a description of what tokenomics is. Tokenomics is the study and research discipline of the incentive structures that create networks and protocols using different cryptocurrencies, primarily utility tokens. It also focuses on the value accrual of that particular token and how that token can be used to motivate certain behaviors. Now, notice I didn't say fully diluted valuation or FDV. I didn't say IMC or initial market cap, and I didn't say token distribution chart, because quite frankly, that's not what tokenomics is. Those are very small parts, if at all parts, of what tokenomics is, and it's incredibly important for founder and investor alike to understand the difference. So today we are going to be going through 6 and a bonus, so 7 basic TLDR comments and structures that is tokenomics. So I'll start with the bonus. Number 0. We're starting at 0, not even 1. This is developer talk right here, okay? Number 0 is that tokenomics is not token distribution charts, fully diluted valuation, or initial market cap. It is not that. Every time I get a Telegram message that asks me one of those questions after asking what the tokenomics is, I feel deeply offended to my core, because those things are not representative as to what tokenomics is. Again, the game theory of any control system, be it government or protocol, is essential to creating any economic standards as to how that entity or system functions. And that is what tokenomics is. And so a random, and pardon my language, ass value all the tokens in that particular supply multiplied by the initial price it has no bearing as to what the tokenomics is. It only has a bearing to what your ROI could be if you invested in it. And so what you should be asking is how am I gonna make my money back? What is my ROI? And if you're using FDV and IMC as 2 variables to determine that, then I understand that. But that is not tokenomics, and please don't mix the two. Again, I'm not sorry on this one. You don't know what you're talking about if you're talking about FDV and IMC in the context of tokenomics, because it's just not it. Number 1, fixed token supplies usually rule supreme. So what does that mean? It means that if you look at all of the biggest protocols and networks that have gone out there, and you look at the ones that have different token supply monetary policies, be it fixed supply, inflationary, or deflationary, or biflationary, typically the ones that have fixed token supplies have the best market capitalization performance in the long run. Now, this doesn't say that you can't use other monetary policies to have other great outcomes. But if we look at history, fixed token supplies typically do very well. And this makes sense. Typically, any type of fixed supply market, usually commodities, if we look at Bitcoin, if we look at gold, if we look at anything that has a fixed supply, it typically goes up in value as long as there are other value propositions or incentives to have that particular asset. And so for any utility token, it might be helpful to have its supply initially fixed. But at least in terms of where the metrics go, fixed token supplies currently reign supreme. So number 2, multi-billion token supplies are better than multi-million token supply. Now, admittedly, this is a fact that can change depending on market dynamics. But if you are going to have to play the game of fundraising and also make sure that your microeconomy of a protocol or a network is going to remain safe, then you need to very keenly consider the number of tokens within your supply. The issue is that if you have millions of tokens and you're only, say, allocating 15% to investors, that means that your token price, your initial token price, is going to be relatively high. And so even if you have great investors, great traction, the whole 9 yards, investors very foolishly are going to look at other projects, mainly because they're most concerned with the multiple ROI that they're going to make based on the token price, not on the equity, and we'll get to equity value accrual in a second. So if you look at most of the granddaddy protocols like Uniswap, Aave, and others, and even recent ones like Athena, it's actually better to have your token supply in the low billions so that you can both have a starting token price that is amicable to investors that want to create a multiple ROI, but also keeps your ecosystem safe from mass or hyperinflation due to having 100 billion or trillion token supply, which could be extremely damaging to the overall economic viability of your protocol. Again, this is just based off of looking at the top 200 protocols and seeing where their overall token supplies lie, and most of the most successful are typically $1 billion and up. Number 3, token utility must be more than just governance and staking. One thing that I think is just a pure fact in crypto is that most founders have been extremely lazy when it comes to token utility. Yes, we have the Ethereums, the Aves, the Unis, the makers that give a great roadmap as to what different things can be utilitarian to a particular token and to that token's broader ecosystem. However, most founders, especially nowadays, are incredibly lazy. And remember, if you're using something as an incentive to elicit a particular behavior, then that incentive has to be wanted. It has to be desired. And so if there's no value accrual to the value of that thing, then your incentive mechanisms are going to be inherently weak. And so using other ways, and of course, being considerate of the different regulations and compliance regimes of the different places where your users exist or reside, can help you make sure that that token accrues actual value. One example is Umoja's working lottery. Now, if we were going to redistribute, say, revenues to all Umoja token holders, that would be bad. That would be a security. And if we were going to just say that all Umoja token holders are automatically eligible for a lottery reward, we could also not really do that because that's gambling, especially in New York. And so how do you get around these different issues of redistributing dividends like a security or putting everybody in a lottery and enlisting gambling? Well, you make them put in work, and that's why we call it a working lottery. A lottery in which everyone who's holding an Umoja asset is eligible to receive rewards, but in order to actually redeem those rewards, they have to put in a certain amount of work, whether it is a social media attestation of joining the community, or it's just doing a swap or a stake on the protocol itself. And these types of innovations give the token utility separate from its price. Because regardless if Umoja or any of its assets is 1 cent or $1 million, the fact is that you can earn some money or crypto by being in this lottery, doing a little bit of work, completely separate of the native asset. And so different utilitarian designs like this can help value accrual and help incentive systems actually work rather than going to a VC or any of your users and saying, hey, you can govern with this, knowing damn well that 99% of us don't govern at all, not even in real life. Number 4, core developer entities can accrue value to equity. So recently I was in a discussion with a very well-known VC, and they told me, well, when is a developer entity, a labs co for a protocol network, ever going to be acquired? And I had to think about this a bit because they're right. A lot of labs entities within the Web3 space are never going to be acquired. And so it's hard to make that initial equity value accrual, argument. But then I had to think a bit more. Well, what average company gets acquired at all? In fact, the vast majority of companies don't get acquired. I believe it's around 99% of companies don't get acquired at all. And that doesn't mean that 99% of companies don't accrue value to equity. And then I also began to think, well, there are entities like Uniswap Labs, for example, that owns the front-end interface of that DEX and makes a percentage of revenue based off of all transaction volume that goes through that DEX that uses that particular interface. And that would obviously accrue value given all of the users that Uniswap has and the amazing volumes that that particular DEX does. So why could you not map that same separation of the underlying smart contracts and protocol and network to some of the software services that make using that network or that are used within that network or protocol easier or better? And you can. In fact, Umoja Labs has done just that. The different strategies leveraged on Umoja protocol are the intellectual property of Umoja Labs Corp. Even though they're being used and democratized for everyone to see, understand, and hopefully benefit from, that same strategy can be used in a centralized way. It can be licensed. It can be put into many different products. And so the actual fact that that particular developer entity can accrue value from the different intellectual property that it is leveraging in unison with that protocol or network. Now, to the argument, I guess, as to whether Umoja Labs would be acquired, well, is that the focus of that particular entity? It may not be that focus at all. In fact, the focus is to increase monthly recurring revenue and have financial statements and balance sheets that are beneficial enough to increase the value of retained earnings, which effectively shows you what the value of a company is. So I politely decline that developer entities can't accrue equity value. And this means that I also decline the fact that the token warrant should be equated in value to that of a safe or an equity investment in these entities. If you have a solid plan as to how your equity accrues value but also how your token accrues value by growing your ecosystem. Don't be scared of defending that. And investors, you have to understand that you're wrong in assuming that this is the case in all particular use cases. Number 5, buybacks over burns, and either mechanism, be it deflationary, should be baked into the regular systematic functioning of the protocol or network, but it should not be built in a way that cannot be controlled or voted on. So if you're not familiar, buyback or burn is when you have a particular token and you institute a buyback and you either burn it, meaning delete it for existence, or you lock it up. By doing so, you create some level of deflation, which can be a value signal to the broader market that that token and that ecosystem is doing particularly well. And this is something that I absolutely support, but I do think that it's very hard to mechanically bake it into the functionality of the protocol or network, and sometimes it needs to be voted on a regular cadence. What I mean is that you don't know what the future market outlook is going to be, and you don't know how much of a buyback or burn you're going to facilitate at any given time. And so because of that level of randomness, which of course is kind of predictable, but kind of not, it's more important to have a governance structure and a process in which you can facilitate those actions on a regular basis. But overall, if you do it, studies do show that it is beneficial. And in fact, it's shown that it's actually more beneficial to facilitate a buyback in the context of digital assets like utility tokens, in contrast to that of corporate stock, in terms of the overall improvement of price action for that particular asset. But of course, all of this is very new, and whether that particular pattern will continue is to be determined. But right now, I state it as something that can be helpful. And last but not least, number 6. I'm sorry guys, I'm gonna have to read this one off my phone because I wanna get it right. I wanna do y'all justice. I took notes for this. I had to prepare. So, hype cycles to drive price movement is unsustainable. Bet on built-in demand mechanics driven by product market fit usage. So what this means is that as an investor or as a supporter, a community member, whichever, you cannot just look at the hype of a project. I've literally had high-profile investors tell me that if the founder is active on social media or if their community is super active, then that is what differentiates their investment. And that's stupid as hell. Because getting hype is great, and getting a lot of followers is great, and even getting TVL from those followers is great. But your ability to do that in the long term when there are so many different narratives in crypto, let alone the world, is a bad bet. You want to bet on product market fit. You want to bet on a team. And if those things can beget regular transaction volume, then that is the hype cycle that you want, right? That of traction and actual work, not of popularity, because popularity comes and goes, and oftentimes something that ends up being the most popular is oftentimes left with everyone seeking its downfall when it has too much power. Now, does this happen with most crypto projects? No, not yet, or at least not too much, but it does happen a lot with corporations, and we haven't seen any of these projects scale to the size of a corporation. Again, this is not to equivocate the two, but it's to say that if you're going to make a bet on the thing that has protocol and network market fit and that begets regular transaction volume from providing a value proposition, rather than something that tries to accrue value by X or by Discord or by Telegram. Now, this is not to say that community is not important. It really is. But if I had to bet my chips on anything that's going to keep my business alive, I'm betting on the customer, the person that wants to use my protocol because I'm solving a problem for them, and they keep on coming because I'm listening to how they want that problem solved. I'm not gonna be listening to some random person on X that leaves a comment saying win TGE. And again, that's not to put out a diss, but it's real because that's how businesses or any microeconomy works. So that is it. Those are my takes on tokenomics. That's the tokenomic TLDR. If you disagree, then let's battle in the comments. I got my receipts ready for you. And if you agree, I appreciate you, man. I need more love in this life. All right, I appreciate it, guys, and peace.